There's been Erika, Jayne, Girardi news. Oh my gosh, hard to keep up. Anyway, I've picked this filter because it reminds me of her. Look. Don't come for me. Unless you want me to come for you, I'll sue you. So Ronald Richards actually filed a motion to get copies of the PPP loan that I, of course, reported on with Lifestyle Andrew on Dishing Drama, Dana Wilkie podcast a few months ago. And it came out, of course, in that podcast that he had taken out a really high loan for 82 attorneys working in his office. And PPP loans are really for people who needed to subsidize their business to try to keep people employed. That was what they were for. So the fact that I think it was July of 2020, Tom Girardi took out a PPP loan, as I mentioned on the podcast, is pretty absurd for 82 attorneys when we know he didn't have 82 attorneys working for him at that time. And in fact, there were attorneys, most of the attorneys were leaving or left. So it was really improper for him to take it. Now, if I recall correctly, the loan that he took out was $2.5 million, which is pretty shocking. How did he qualify at that time for that? The question is, did he lie on the application? I mean, we know he definitely lied a little bit, right? Because I don't believe that at that time he even had that many attorneys working for him. But it depends on how he positioned it, I suppose. It's upsetting, but at least Ronald Richards is now looking into it. So he's going to be, I know, scrutinizing the application that Tom filed to attain this loan. He's already been found to have applied for loans using collateral that he wasn't supposed to. So this is just kind of another probably example of that. I won't be shocked if it comes back that he did lie or exaggerate the truth. Normally to lie on a PPP loan would be like a federal crime, right? But because he's in a conservatorship, I don't know if they can actually take criminal proceedings against him unless they can prove that he is hiding within that conservatorship. Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of people got excited when he said, that he felt that Erika knew about his legal problems and implied that, Erika knew a lot, maybe. A lot of people got excited that could be used to help the victims in court. But as Ronald pointed out, which is accurate, which I said to Up and Adam the other day on that live I did, when you're in a conservatorship, there is none of your testimony can be used because you're considered mentally incompetent. Now, Tom said something really interesting about not wanting to be in a home, which I'm pretty sure Tom Girardi is not happy being in this senior living home. I don't know how much his family's visiting him. Obviously, Erika isn't visiting him at all. And I'd say the resentment in him is building with each day, and he will want to spill more and more beans. Now, none of it will have consequences for Erika because she'll just say that he has mental issues and can't be responsible for what he says. But I have a feeling Tom is going to start to say stuff more and more when he realizes the paparazzi are out in front of the door. So can't wait for that. Anyway, what I was going to say, I did think something was weird. When he left the lunch and he said, I think she knows what, about his legal woes or whatever, as a few days ago. None of his friends he was having lunch with tried to stop him from talking. They told them the cameramen to put the cameras down. I thought that was really interesting because I put myself in a position where I've gone to lunch with a friend of mine who's having mental issues enough to be in a conservatorship, or even my grandma. Let's just call it my grandma. I go out with my grandma for lunch and the paparazzis pull up and start asking her like hard-hitting questions. And I think my grandmother has Alzheimer's and is barely hanging on. I am going to say to my grandmother, Grandma, don't you say anything. Grandma, stop talking. You need to be quiet now because these people don't have your best interest in mind. But none of his friends did that. They said, put the camera down. I thought that was interesting because that leads me to believe his friends don't believe Tom Girardi is out of his mind and isn't speaking, properly. They didn't dare say it to him. So I think that's an indicator. Now, Erika's been partying her ass off in Vegas. She was at Sushi Samba. By the way, that used to be a Miami restaurant. They do Spanish food mixed with sushi. Anyway, she was at the opening of Sushi Samba. She's just having a grand old time out in Vegas. Oh, I'm sure she went to Teddy Mellencamp's dad's little concert. Met up with the girls over there, just having a ball. Well, what was I going to tell you? Oh, she did say something on her Twitter today, which might interest you. She said that she believes the reunion's going to be 4 parts, and it's all because of her. She's not wrong. There's a lot to unpack. But I thought that was kind of, wow. She can't stop loving herself, can she? Wow. So I don't know if you guys heard Andy Cohen. Oh my gosh, he was going on and on to Jimmy Fallon about the reunion, and he was like, it's not 1, it's not 2, it's not 3, it's not 4 parts. I'm like, calm down, Andy. Jeez, guy. He's like, we're not leaving anything on the floor. And Jimmy Fallon's like, yeah, you're going to ask the hard questions. We can't wait. The ones that, no one will ask but you, and they'll trust to answer. And I was just like, okay, if there was like an eye roll the size of the planet, that's what I was doing. But I mean, let's not forget that there are victims. I mean, I felt like it was kind of gross, honestly, the way Andy handled it. It was like a car salesman where the cars are, going to drive off the lot and not work properly, being excited to sell you a car. I don't know. I mean, it's all fun and good to be like, ooh, this is great content. But, there are victims here. There are victims, guys. There are cancer victims. There are plane crash orphans. There are people who've been disfigured for the rest of their life that are missing their money. And Erika spent it on her glam and her lifestyle, and so did Tom. And Tom supposedly couldn't say no to Erika. And it's just like, we can't lose that, I just figured out why the reunion is going to be heartbreaking to Garcelle and Kathy. And that is because maybe, just maybe, Andy is going to remind Erika that there were victims that were hurt by her lavish lifestyle. And maybe the heartbreaking part is the victims instead of Erika, because all the fans think Erika's the one who's going to come off on the show as the heartbreaking one. I mean, it's all fun and good to be like, ooh, this is great content, but, there are victims here. There are victims, guys. There are cancer victims. There are plane crash orphans. There are people who've been disfigured for the rest of their life that are missing their money. And Erika spent it on her glam and her lifestyle. And so did Tom. And Tom supposedly couldn't say no to Erika. And it's just like, we can't lose that, I just figured out why the reunion is going to be heartbreaking to Garcelle and Kathy. And that is because maybe, just maybe, Andy is going to remind Erika that there were victims that were hurt by her lavish lifestyle. And maybe the heartbreaking part is the victims instead of Erika, because all the fans think Erika's the one who's going to come off on the show as the heartbreaking one.